Today I fucked up by completely misunderstanding my doctor's instructions while getting an x-ray. I needed to get an x-ray on my back today, due to some pain after an accident. This was also my first time having one in this location. The only other time I've gotten an x-ray was for a broken wrist as a kid. I guess I should also mention that I can get quite nervous at the doctors. So I go into the clinic to wait, and it wasn't long before the radiologist calls me in. He was a soft-spoken man right off the bat and a little hard to hear. Since it was my back that was getting x-rayed, I had to remove my bra. He got me positioned in front of the machine and started to leave the room to take the image. He stopped at the doorframe and said, "Hold your breasts." I have a larger bust, so I'm thinking, sure, I can hold these bad boys up. Especially since I didn't have the support of my bra. So I do what he says. Turns out the radiologist was saying hold your breath. So I'm standing there with a melon in each hand when he says, "No, I need you to not breath while I take the image." Obviously following directions is not my strong suit, and this resulted in a pretty awkward appointment. Afterwards, I sat in my car for a moment and contemplated all my life choices. Too long didn't read. I was getting an x-ray and thought the radiologist said hold your breasts when he actually said hold your breath. And my dumbass held my breasts. Edit, I'm glad I was able to make some of you laugh. And my back will be fine with some rest, anti-inflammatory meds, and muscle relaxers. Thankfully there was no actual injury to the vertebrae. I had a bad fall where I landed straight on my back. I walked it off for about a week, until I bent down weird to pick up my cat. Super dumb way to hurt yourself, I know, and experienced some pretty severe pain that didn't go away. The x-ray was more of a precaution. Don't worry, I'm an x-ray tech and people do silly things all the time. It makes us laugh and it makes the day more fun. Lol. Once I handed an elderly lady a gown to put on before her x-rays. She said she was ready and came out completely naked. We had a good laugh. Lol. Okay, this really does make me feel better. Wait till you have to get a mammogram. Poor thing, hope you feel better. Lol, and this is why I say now take a deep breath in instead of hold your breath, smiley face. If it makes you feel better, we often ask people to hold their breasts out of the way in medicine. It's a valid mistake. You kinky puffs. Thanks for sharing. This was a fun laugh. This not quite the same thing, but I had a funny misunderstanding with instructions and my breasts too. On my wedding day, after getting into my dress and waiting in the bridal suite, the male photographer said, "Okay, now look at your girls," and I very promptly looked straight down at my chest. He quickly said, "No, your other girls." And that's when I realized all my bridesmaids were sitting on a couch behind me. Poor photographer was embarrassed and apologetic because he didn't want me to feel uncomfortable thinking he told me to look down. I totally understood once he clarified, and I got a really great picture of myself genuinely laughing and my bridesmaids chuckling as well. Today I fucked up by not asking how the syringes worked at my vaccine clinic. Warning: this is about needles. I am an EMT and am currently volunteering at my local vaccine clinic. Up until yesterday I had been working as a monitor, but I had been through all the training to vaccinate as well. Yesterday they had me as a vaccinator. They showed me to my station, asked if I had any questions, and like an idiot, I said no, hoping to make a good first impression. The first few shots were a little nerve-wracking, but once I got into a rhythm it was fine. Clean the arm, inject, push plunger, remove the needle, drop it in the sharp spin, give them a band-aid and a sticker and move on to the next person. It was going great until my fifth or sixth person. I guess I pressed a little harder on the plunger than I had been before because all of a sudden I heard a small pop noise. I pulled the syringe back to reveal the needle was completely gone. My soul died in that moment. I looked at the woman sitting on the chair and thought, oh my god, this lady has a needle in her arm. I couldn't see any metal sticking out and I thought it must have snapped off while I was doing the shot. I quickly flagged down one of the supervisors and told him the needle broke. He was so calm and simply asked if I had already given her the vaccine. I had, and I said so, but I couldn't figure out why he wasn't freaking out when I showed him the syringe without a needle. I repeated yes, but the needle broke. I think it's still inside her arm. At this point the woman was terrified. I felt like I was about to cry, and this supervisor was still cool as a cucumber when he informed me the needle was inside the syringe. And sure enough, there it was. The needle hadn't broken. No one told me that the syringes we had safety springs that were supposed to pull the needle back quickly once you had finished giving the shot by pressing the button on the end of the syringe. In my efforts to make a good impression, I never asked. I felt so terrible and I just kept apologizing to this poor woman. I'm sure I freaked her out to no end. The rest of the day went fine and the job was actually much easier once I started using the release button. But I will never forget the feeling off that first pop and the look in that woman's eyes when I said I think it's still in her arm. Too long didn't read. I didn't know the syringes had a safety release button when working as a vaccinator. The first time the button activated I thought the needle snapped in a patient's arm and I was absolutely terrified. Edit, I'm starting to see the same messages come up a lot, so let me answer a few common questions. Yes, CMTs can give the vaccine in my area. No, I'm not incompetent at my job, but thank you for feeding my anxiety. Yes, I should have asked more questions. That's the moral of the story. I get it. I would never put my ego over the safety of a patient. No, this is not a reason not to get vaccinated. Yes, everyone who got the vaccine before I learned about the vanish points were completely fine and fully vaccinated. The only people I screwed over was myself, for handling used needles I didn't have to, and the poor woman I probably scared half to death. And to the lovely people who have decided to use this post as an anti-vax platform, feel free to see yourself out. I don't want any of that here. Thank you all for reading and for the awards. It's very nice to see how many people have had similar experiences. Hope I helped someone not have this happen to them in the future. Asked if I had any questions, and like an idiot, I said no, hoping to make a good first impression. In your own defense, I can't imagine why you would think to ask. By the way, do your syringes do a magic trick no other syringe I've ever held in my life has done? I'd say this is entirely on them for not telling you. My fear of needles was always fueled by the fear of the needle breaking off inside me. This is terrifying, but glad the needle didn't actually break off. Oh no. I'm sorry if this made your fear worse. I can assure you that the needle did not break, and I don't think it would even have been possible for it to. To be fair, not everyone retracts retractable needles, so depending on who you asked you might not have known. I started vaccinating at a clinic with retractable needles, then at the clinic I've been more recently volunteering at I asked the person before me if the needles were retractable. She said no. A few people in pressed a little harder, and the needle retracted. If I hadn't encountered a retractable needle before, that could certainly have freaked me out. When I was a nursing student I used a vanishing needle for the first time and wasn't told. I gave the shot and my teacher was like, okay, now push hard on the plunger. In my head I'm questioning why I would do that, but I listened to her and it made a loud click and I thought the needle went flying off into the room somewhere. I had a good laugh about it afterwards. Vanishing point syringes are the hecking best. Not knowing that you're using one would be terrifying. Today I fucked up by forging my mom's signature. So this happened in 3rd grade, but I still think about it more than any other childhood memory, so I figured I would share. I didn't do my homework one day, like most days, and my teacher was understandably fed up with me. She wrote a letter to my mom to inform her that I hadn't completed my homework, and I was to get it signed by the next day. For some backstory, I spent a lot of my childhood grounded. I was quite a terrible brat. This time, though, I had a plan to not be grounded for ignoring my schoolwork. I was going to sign the letter from my teacher as my mom. She wouldn't ever know I hadn't done my homework, I wouldn't be grounded, and my teacher would get the signature she wanted. I went to school the next day and turned the letter into my teacher. I was nervous, but after a few hours I hadn't heard anything about it, so I figured I got away with it. Man, was I wrong. My teacher asked me to hang back with her during lunch, so I obliged. This is how our conversation went. Teacher, I know your mom didn't sign this letter. Me, yes she did. Teacher, no, she did not. Me, how would you know? Teacher, I'm pretty sure your mom's name isn't Mom. Me, y'all. I had signed the letter Mom. Literally just wrote Mom at the bottom of the paper. I had never thought about my mom's actual name, let alone signature. My teacher then gave me another letter to take home to my mom that said 1. I didn't do my homework, and 2. I lied about getting the first letter signed. Now, I may have been the biggest idiot in the world, but I didn't want to get grounded. So I devised a master plan. My mom would pack me a small lunch every day, and she would include a nice handwritten note on a napkin. I woke up at 4 a.m. when I knew she would be packing my lunch. She worked really early until really late, and asked her to sign the lunch note for me. She signed it Mom, so I asked her to use her actual signature. Bless her heart, she did it. When she left for work, I very carefully traced her signature on the damning letter from the school. It was the perfect plan, or so I thought. My mom has a weird signature that looks like scribbles. I turned the letter in, waited, and again was called to stay behind during lunch. The conversation went much the same as the first. Instead of sending a letter home, though, my teacher decided to call my mom at work. This was a big no-no. My mom worked at a very busy hospital and could hardly spare time in her day to talk on the phone. My teacher made me admit to my mom what I had done. I was sobbing at this point. My mom flipped out. She told me that this is called forgery, she was going to call the FBI to come after me, and I was going to go to prison. She told me my family was going to sue me. For reference, 2 people in my family are high-profile prosecutors, and 2 are defense attorneys. So I'm crying, thinking I'm going to get sent to the slammer and my life is over for good. I get home from school to find my mom waiting for me, and she grounded me for 2 months. She took my favorite possession, my light pink Nintendo Ds. My Nintendogs were surely going to run away within these 2 months. I was devastated. 2 months later, my mom couldn't find my Nintendo Ds. I never did get it back. My mom texted me yesterday that she finally found it. It's been 15 years. Too long didn't read. I forged my mom's signature on a letter from my school, but I wrote Mom. I forged it again, correctly, but the school didn't believe me. I had to call my mom to tell her what happened, and I had my Nintendo Ds taken away for 2 months. My mom lost my Ds and I haven't seen it in 15 years. She found it an hour after I bought a Nintendo Switch. Edit. A lot of Redditors have pointed out that this sounds similar to a post from the POV of a parent who lost their child's Nintendo for more than a decade. I'm glad to report that my mom does not use Reddit, so some other sucker lived with the loss of a Nintendo for many years. I asked my mom where she found it, and it turned out to be hidden in a box of random cords in one of her spare bedrooms. She is flying out here to see me in a week, and will hopefully be bringing the Ds with her. I can't wait to see if the thing even turns on anymore. This reminds me of how in middle school we had to have our parents sign our progress reports to verify they saw what our current grades were. Well, one progress report in 7th grade I did not have very good grades on, and I knew my parents were going to flip. So I found an old progress report and very carefully cut off the top 1/2 inch of the page which had the old date on it and had my dad sign it. Obviously I couldn't hand that back into my teacher, so the next morning I pretended I lost my progress report and had my dad sign a blank piece of paper saying he saw my progress report before I lost it. I got away with it too. Never would have gotten past my mom though. Shit. I used to scan my report cards and Photoshop them and print out new ones to show my parents. I even had a stash of the old continuous feed printer paper, with the perforated strips on the sides. I'd tear the strips off and run a sheet through the regular printer. Never got caught.